My sister raised her 3 kids without rules, so I hosted a child-free Thanksgiving. But they came, ruined my party and broke the TV. She laughed. They're kids. So I left them without Christmas gifts to repair the damage, and then... Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Rebecca, which is titled like this: My sister raised her 3 kids without rules, so I hosted a child-free Thanksgiving. But they came, ruined my party and broke the TV. She laughed. They're kids. So I left them without Christmas gifts to repair the damage, and then... Well, let's go. I'm Rebecca. I'm 31. I work as a middle manager at this big corporation. Nothing too exciting, but it pays well enough that I was able to buy my own house about 3 years ago. It's nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood, but it's mine and I love it. My family consists of my parents, who are both retired now, and my older sister Sarah. Sarah's 34 and has 3 boys, Jake who's 10, Tyler who's 7, and little Ben who just turned 5. She divorced her husband last year, which, honestly, wasn't a huge surprise to any of us since they've been fighting constantly for years. The good news is that her ex pays decent alimony, so money isn't really tight for her. She works part-time at some marketing agency. Our family has always been pretty close. My parents help Sarah out financially when she meets it, and I've been paying her rent for the past year since the divorce. It's about $800 a month, which isn't nothing, but I can afford it and I wanted to help out. Family is family, right? The thing is, Sarah has some very specific ideas about raising kids. She's really into this whole philosophy about letting children grow up completely free from rules and boundaries. She says it's the only way to raise truly creative and independent people. On paper, it sounds nice enough. But in practice, it means her 3 boys basically do whatever they want, whenever they want. I've been watching the boys several times when Sarah needed help with errands or had work meetings. Each time was basically the same story. She dropped them off with a quick thanks, "You're the best," and disappear for hours while I dealt with the chaos. The boys would immediately take over my house like they owned it. Jake would grab the TV remote and blast cartoons, Tyler would raid my fridge without asking, and Ben would just scream if he didn't get his way about anything. Every time I tried to set even the smallest boundary, they'd look at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You can't tell us what to do," became Jake's favorite phrase. When I'd suggest they ask before taking food, or maybe not jump on my furniture with their shoes on, they'd just ignore me or threaten to tell their mom that I was being mean. The breaking point came during what turned out to be the last time I ever agreed to watch them. Sarah had dropped them off around noon, saying she had some appointments and would be back by 5. The usual chaos started immediately. Jake commandeered my TV, Tyler started making a mess in my kitchen, and Ben kept whining that he was bored. Then Tyler discovered this ceramic vase I bought on vacation in Italy. It wasn't expensive or anything, but I liked it and it looked nice on my coffee table. He started tossing a ball around the living room, and I told him to take it outside. Tyler just kept throwing it, higher and higher, grinning at me like it was some kind of game. Ben bought it, looked fun, and grabbed one of my throw pillows to toss around too. Before I knew it, they were having this 3-way catch session in my living room, completely ignoring me when I told them to stop. And then it happened. Tyler threw the ball to Ben, but Ben missed and it bounced off the coffee table, knocking my vase onto the hardwood floor. It shattered into about 50 pieces. All 3 boys just stood there looking at the mess, and then Jake shrugged and said, "Oops." That was it. I was done. I walked over, picked up the TV remote, turned off the television and pointed to my couch. "All 3 of you, sit down, now." They actually listened, probably because I'd never used that tone with them before. "What are you doing?" Tyler asked. "I'm setting some boundaries in my own house," I said. "You just broke something that belonged to me. In my house, when someone breaks something, they sit quietly and think about what they did wrong. No TV, no running around, just sitting until your mom gets here." Ben started to get up and I pointed back at the couch. "Sit." He sat. They stayed on that couch for the next 3 hours while I cleaned up the vase pieces and tried to salvage what was left of my afternoon. They didn't say a word, just sat there looking around awkwardly. It was the quietest my house had been since they arrived. When Sarah came back at 5, the boys immediately ran to her and started talking over each other about how mean I'd been to them. "She made us sit still, Mom," Tyler whined. "She wouldn't let us watch TV," added Jake. And she was really mad at us, Ben chimed in. Sarah's face got red and she looked at me like I just kicked a puppy. How dare you treat my children like that, she said. You had no right to punish them. They're just kids, Rebecca. I gestured at the trash can, where I'd thrown away the pieces of my broken vase. They broke my vase after I specifically told them to stop throwing things in the living room. It was an accident. You're being cruel over a stupid vase. Cruel. I could feel my voice getting louder. Sarah, they destroyed my house while you were gone. I asked them nicely to stop, and they ignored me. What was I supposed to do, just let them break everything I own? You were supposed to let them be themselves. This is exactly why kids grow up repressed and afraid to express their creativity. You don't understand strange children. That word, cruel, really got to me. I just spent my entire afternoon cleaning up after her kids while she was off doing whatever. I'd been patient, I'd been understanding, and I'd tried talking to them nicely first. But apparently wanting basic respect in my own home made me cruel. Fine, I said. If that's how you feel, then I guess your boys are strangers to me, just like you said. And strangers don't get to come into my house and break my stuff. Find someone else to watch them when you need help. Sarah grabbed her kids' jackets and started shoving their arms into the sleeves, muttering under her breath about how impossible I was being. She didn't even say goodbye when she left, just slammed my front door behind her. After that blow-up with Sarah, I thought I was finally free from the chaos. No more babysitting meant no more cleaning up after 3 wild kids, no more broken belongings, and no more headaches. For about 2 weeks, it was pure bliss. I could come home from work to a clean house, watch whatever I wanted on TV, and actually relax. But then, Saturday rolled around, and I remembered I was supposed to go to my parents' house for dinner. The Saturday dinners were basically a repeat of what used to happen at my house, except now my parents had to deal with it. The boys would take over the dining room, ignore every request for decent behavior, and turn what should have been a nice family meal into complete chaos. They'd throw food at each other, spill drinks everywhere, and completely ignore my parents when they tried to set any boundaries. Sarah would just sit there on her phone the entire time, texting someone and smiling like nothing was happening around her. When I'd ask her to control her kids, she'd say it wasn't my business without even looking up. My parents would just shrug helplessly when I looked at them for support. After every dinner, Sarah would leave with the boys and my parents would ask me to stay and help clean up the disaster they'd left behind. Food on the floor, sticky fingerprints on everything, broken dishes, it was exhausting. This happened almost every single Saturday, and I could see how worn down my parents were getting. The whole situation was driving me crazy, but I didn't know what to do about it. Then November started, and I realized Thanksgiving was coming up fast. The thought of spending an entire holiday dealing with that chaos made my stomach turn. That's when I got an idea. What if I didn't go to my parents' house for Thanksgiving this year? What if I hosted my own party instead? I called my mom first to let her know I wouldn't be coming to their dinner. What do you mean you're not coming? Mom asked. It's Thanksgiving. We always spend it together. I know, but I want to try hosting this year. Have my own celebration. There was a long pause. Rebecca, is this about Sarah and the boys? I couldn't lie to her. Partly, yes. I just want to have a peaceful holiday for once. Mom sighed. I understand, honey. I really do. After that conversation, I started reaching out to our extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, basically everyone who usually came to my parents' big Thanksgiving dinner. I pitched it as a more intimate gathering at my house, but with one specific condition: no children under 15. It's going to be an adults-only celebration, I told my Aunt Linda. More sophisticated, you know? We can actually have conversations without interruptions. Most of my relatives were totally on board with the idea. My Uncle Mike actually laughed when I mentioned the age limit. Finally, he said, I love kids, but sometimes it's nice to have a meal where you can finish a sentence. My Aunt Carol was even more enthusiastic. Oh, thank God, she said. I was dreading another holiday dinner with those boys running around screaming. Don't get me wrong, I love them, but by the end of the week, I had 8 relatives confirmed for my Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone seemed genuinely excited about the idea of a calm, adult celebration. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I was at home preparing my menu when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. It was the first time she'd contacted me since our fight. Hey, just heard from Mom that you're not coming tomorrow. Why are you celebrating separately? I stared at the message for a few minutes, debating how honest to be. Finally, I decided to just tell the truth. I'm hosting my own Thanksgiving this year. I wanted to have a child-free party so I could actually enjoy the holiday without dealing with behavioral issues. I had sent and watched the 3 dots appear and disappear about 6 times. Sarah was clearly typing and deleting her response over and over. Finally, after about 10 minutes, she sent back, "You're being terrible. You don't want to see your own nephews on Thanksgiving." I typed back immediately, "It's not personal, Sarah. I just want to have a quiet, peaceful celebration, without the drama that comes with ill-mannered children." She read the message right away. I could see the read receipt, but she didn't respond. I waited for about an hour, expecting some kind of angry reply, but nothing came. I was pretty sure she got the message loud and clear though. She knew exactly what I was talking about when I mentioned ill-mannered children. Thursday morning, I woke up feeling genuinely excited about Thanksgiving for the first time in years. I sent holiday wishes to my parents and Sarah in our family group chat. Mom and Dad both wrote back with sweet messages and heart emojis. Sarah left me on read. I spent the morning cooking and setting up my dining room. I used my good china for the first time since I bought the house, lit some candles, and even put together a nice fall centerpiece. My house looked like something out of a magazine, and I was actually proud of what I'd created. My relatives started arriving around 2 in the afternoon. My Uncle Mike brought wine, Aunt Linda made her famous stuffing, and my cousin David even showed up with flowers. Everyone was in such a good mood, complimenting my cooking and my house. We were having actual adult conversations about work and travel and books. It felt like what Thanksgiving was supposed to feel like. I just put the turkey on the table when the doorbell rang. I walked to the front door, wondering who it could be. All my guests were already here, and I wasn't expecting anyone else. Maybe it was a neighbor or someone making deliveries. I opened the door and my heart just stopped. There stood Sarah with all 3 boys, grinning like they just pulled off the world's greatest surprise. "Surprise!" they all shouted at once, and before I could even process what was happening, they pushed past me into my house. I stood there in shock, watching as my carefully planned adult dinner party turned into complete chaos in about 30 seconds. Sarah marched straight into my dining room like she owned the place and plopped herself down in my chair at the head of the table, the hostess seat that I'd been sitting in. "Hi everyone," she announced to my confused relatives. "Sorry we're late." Jake, Tyler and Ben immediately zeroed in on the food table and started grabbing handfuls of everything they could reach. They didn't use plates or napkins, just grabbed rolls and stuffing with their bare hands and sat down on my living room floor to eat, facing the TV. Tyler found the remote and cranked the volume up to maximum. The sound of some cartoon was now blasting through my house, completely drowning out any possibility of conversation. My guests were all staring at each other with these horrified expressions. My Aunt Linda had this tight smile on her face that meant she was trying to be polite, but I could tell she was furious. Uncle Mike was looking at me like he was waiting for me to do something. "Mom's headache is getting worse," my cousin David said to his elderly mother, helping her up from her chair. "We should probably get going." "Oh, don't leave because of us," Sarah called out cheerfully. "The kids are just excited to be here." But Aunt Carol was already gathering her person coat. She gave me this apologetic look and whispered, "I'm sorry, honey, but the noise is just too much for me." She left, and I could see other relatives starting to shift uncomfortably in their chairs, clearly thinking about making their own exits. I grabbed Sarah's arm and physically pulled her out of my dining room chair. "Kitchen now," I said through gritted teeth. I dragged her into the kitchen and closed the door behind us. "What the hell are you doing here?" I whispered furiously. "I specifically told you this was an adults-only party." Sarah had this innocent expression on her face that made me want to scream. "The boys really wanted to see you on Thanksgiving. I thought it would be a nice surprise." From the living room, I could hear another crash, followed by screaming. We both ran out to see what had happened. My brand new 65-inch TV, the one I'd saved up for months to buy, had a massive crack running straight down the middle of the screen. It was completely destroyed. One of the boys had thrown the remote control directly at it. And now, my $2,000 television was nothing but expensive garbage. All 3 boys were sitting on my couch looking guilty as hell, but none of them said anything. "Who did this?" I demanded silence. My Uncle Mike, who was still at the table, cleared his throat. It was Tyler, he said quietly. His brother changed the channel to something he didn't like, so he grabbed the remote and threw it at the TV. I felt like I was going to pass out. $2,000 gone. Because a 7-year-old couldn't handle someone changing the channel. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Your son just destroyed my television. You need to pay me back the $2,000 it cost. Sarah looked at the broken TV and then back at me. And she actually started laughing. Are you serious right now? It was just an accident. Kids break things sometimes, Rebecca. It's not that big a deal. That was it. I'd officially reached my limit. Get out, I said. Get your children and get out of my house, right now. She must have realized I was serious because she started gathering up her kids, muttering under her breath about how crazy I was being. The boys whined about having to leave, but for once, Sarah didn't negotiate with them. She just grabbed their coats and headed for the door. This is exactly why no one likes you, she shouted as she left. You're mean and selfish and you hate children. The door slammed behind them, and my living room fell silent, except for the sound of my remaining relatives shuffling awkwardly. Well, Uncle Mike said finally, this has been interesting. One by one, my guests made polite excuses and left. Within an hour, my beautiful Thanksgiving dinner party was over, and I was alone in my house staring at my destroyed TV and the mess of food scattered across my floor. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving evening cleaning up and getting angrier by the minute. $2,000. For a TV that I'd had for exactly 6 weeks. The next day, I drove to my parents' house to tell them what had happened. I found them in their kitchen, and the moment I walked in, I could tell they already knew. Sarah told us about the TV, Mom said quietly. Did she tell you that Tyler threw the remote at it on purpose? And that she laughed when I asked her to pay for it? My parents exchanged one of those looks that married couples get after 40 years together. She said it was an accident, Dad said. It wasn't an accident, Dad, and even if it was, she should pay for it. Mom shook her head. Rebecca, you know Sarah doesn't have that kind of money lying around. Maybe you could just let it go? I stared at my mother. Let it go. Mom, it's $2,000. I know it's a lot of money, but family is more important than things. I left my parents' house that day feeling completely alone. Even they were taking Sarah's side, making excuses for behavior that would never have been tolerated when Sarah and I were kids. That evening, I sat in my living room staring at my broken TV and made a decision. If nobody else was going to hold Sarah accountable, I would. I decided that this Christmas, and next Christmas too, I wouldn't be giving any gifts to Sarah or her boys. Usually, I spent about $300 on each of them every year. Over 2 years, that would add up to $2,400. I didn't tell anyone about my decision. I just ordered myself a replacement TV and started planning for Christmas. The weeks leading up to Christmas were peaceful for me. I bought Dad a nice watch and Mom a jewelry set she'd been admiring. I figured I could drop by for a quick visit, give them their presents, and head home before things got too chaotic. I knocked on my parents' front door around 6 in the evening on December 24th, carrying 2 nicely wrapped presents. Mom opened the door with flour on her apron. She'd been baking Christmas cookies all day. Rebecca, I'm so glad you came by, she said, hugging me. Come in, come in. I stepped inside and immediately heard the familiar sounds of chaos coming from the living room. Shouting, running feet, something crashing into furniture. Sarah and the boys were already there. I can't stay long, I told Mom as we walked toward the kitchen. I just wanted to drop off these gifts for you and Dad. In the living room, I could see the 3 boys racing around my parents' coffee table while Sarah sat in Dad's recliner, once again glued to her phone. Nothing had changed. Jake was pulling ornaments off my parents' Christmas tree. Tyler was jumping on the couch, and Ben was crying about something. I handed my parents their gifts and was about to make my escape when all 3 boys came running into the kitchen. Amber, Becca, Jake shouted, where are our presents? Yeah, where are our Christmas presents? Tyler demanded. Ben just stood there with his hands out, expecting me to produce gifts like some kind of Christmas magic trick. My parents looked at me expectantly too, clearly assuming I had presents for the boys somewhere. This was the moment I'd been planning for weeks. I looked directly at the 3 boys and spoke loudly enough that Sarah could hear me from the living room. This year and next year, I won't be giving you Christmas presents. I'm using that money to pay myself back for the TV you broke at Thanksgiving." The reaction was immediate and dramatic. All 3 boys started crying at once. Ben threw himself on the floor and started having a full meltdown, screaming and kicking his legs. Tyler ran to get Sarah, and Jake just stood there with his mouth open like he couldn't believe what he'd heard. "Mom!" Tyler screamed. "Amber Becca says no Christmas presents." Sarah came storming into the kitchen, her face red with anger. "You're being vindictive and cruel. They're just children. They're children who destroyed my property and whose mother refused to take responsibility for it." Sarah's voice got louder and more shrill. "You're punishing innocent children over a stupid TV. What kind of person does that? You're the worst sister in the world." I stayed completely calm, which seemed to make her even angrier. "The only sister behaving terribly here is you, Sarah. You don't discipline your children, you don't teach them to respect other people's property, and you don't take responsibility when they cause damage. That's why they're learning there are consequences now." Sarah looked at my parents. "Are you going to let her talk to me like this?" Mom and Dad both looked uncomfortable, but neither of them said anything to defend Sarah. I think they were tired of cleaning up after her kids too. "Fine," Sarah spat, "we're leaving. And don't expect to see us again." She gathered up her crying children and stormed out, slamming the front door so hard that my mom's Christmas wreath fell off the hook. I said goodbye to my parents, and went home to spend a quiet Christmas Eve by myself. I ordered Chinese food, watched old movies, and texted holiday wishes to my friends. It was honestly one of the most relaxing Christmas Eves I'd had in years. 2 days later, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw that Sarah had posted something that made my blood boil. It was a picture of all 3 boys crying, with a long caption about how cruel and vindictive I was. She wrote that I was so heartless that I deprived my innocent nephews of Christmas presents, and ended the post by saying she no longer considered me her sister. Her friends were commenting with outraged messages about what a terrible person I was. Sarah was liking every single comment that called me names. I started typing a response post to tell the whole story, the broken TV, the ruined Thanksgiving, all of it. But then I stopped and deleted what I'd written. All of our relatives knew what had really happened. They'd either been there for Thanksgiving or heard the story from someone who was. I didn't need to defend myself to Sarah's Facebook friends who didn't know the full situation. Instead, I sent Sarah a private message: "Since you no longer consider me your sister, I guess I'll stop paying your rent. After all, why would I pay $800 a month for someone who's not my family?" She read that message in about 2 seconds, and my phone immediately started ringing. Sarah's name flashed on the screen over and over, but I didn't answer. She called 12 times in a row. Then the text started: "Rebecca, please don't do this, and I didn't mean what I said, and the kids need a place to live." About an hour later, I checked Sarah's Facebook page out of curiosity. The post about me being a terrible person was gone, completely deleted. She sent one more text that night: "Please don't stop paying rent. I can't afford the apartment without your help." I didn't respond to that either. 2 months have passed since that Christmas confrontation. I've continued paying Sarah's rent because I didn't want my nephews to end up homeless, but I haven't spoken to Sarah at all. I've been visiting my parents at times when I know Sarah and the boys won't be there, usually weekday evenings when the kids have schooled the next day. Last week, Mom mentioned something interesting during one of our visits. "You know," she said, "Sarah seems to be working with the boys on their behavior lately. They actually sat through dinner last Saturday without throwing food or getting up from the table. And Sarah made them clean up their own messes." Dad nodded. "It's like night and day compared to how they used to act." "Maybe your boundaries taught her something," Mom suggested carefully. "Maybe she realized she needed to step up as a parent." Mom asked if I wanted to consider making up with Sarah, maybe letting the boys come around again. But I'm not ready for that yet. I want to see real, lasting change before I open that door again. A couple of good dinners at my parents' house doesn't erase months of chaos and a broken TV.